You're lying in bed. It's quiet. The room is dark, and everything should feel still. But then, out of nowhere, your brain pulls up a conversation from 3 years ago. Maybe it's an argument you lost. Maybe it's a moment you wish had gone differently. Maybe it's just something you said that still makes you cringe every single time it comes back. And suddenly, you're rewriting it. You're replaying it, saying the perfect thing this time, the thing you should have said back then. Nobody's watching, nobody's listening, but your heart is racing, like it's actually happening right now. If that sounds familiar, don't go anywhere, because your brain is doing this for a very specific reason. And once you truly understand it, you'll never see yourself the same way again. Before we get into anything else, I want to say something to you directly. You are not weird. You are not broken. And you are not too much or too in your head. There is real, documented psychology behind why your mind creates these scenarios. And understanding it doesn't just explain a quirk about yourself. It completely changes how you relate to who you are. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why your brain does this, what it's actually trying to protect you from, and when this gift quietly becomes a trap. Let's get into it. Firstly, psychologists refer to it as mental simulation. Here's something most people don't realize about the brain. It wasn't designed, primarily, to experience the present moment. Its core job, the one it has been doing since the very beginning of human history, is to predict what comes next. Every decision you make, every risk you take, every conversation you walk into, your brain is already 10 steps ahead, running calculations, modeling outcomes, quietly preparing you for what it thinks is coming. And one of the most powerful tools it uses to do that, it runs simulations. Think about how pilots are trained. Before a pilot ever sits in a real cockpit, they spend hundreds of hours inside a flight simulator, practicing emergencies, navigating turbulence, handling equipment failure, all in a completely artificial environment. The whole point is that when the real moment finally comes, their body already knows what to do. Your brain works exactly the same way. When you lie awake at night, rehearsing a difficult conversation before it happens, the one you need to have with your boss, your partner, or your parent, you're not being anxious. You're being prepared. Your mind is running the simulation so that you don't crash when it actually matters. And when you replay that argument from 3 years ago, and this time you finally say the right thing, your brain is filing that away, learning from it, quietly updating its model of how the world works. That is not a flaw in your wiring. That is your brain doing its job exactly as it was designed to. But not every fake scenario is about preparing for the future. A lot of them are about the past, and they keep coming back, uninvited, unannounced, like a song stuck on repeat that you never chose to play. Why does that happen? This is your brain doing something called emotional regulation. When something painful happens, a rejection, an embarrassing moment, a conflict that never got properly resolved, your nervous system doesn't simply file it away and move on. It stores it with a flag, an unfinished marker, and it keeps returning to that memory, quietly and persistently, searching for a version of events that finally feels resolved. Replaying that argument and winning it this time, your brain gets a small but real dose of relief. A simulation of closure, even when the actual conversation never happened. I came across a comment on a video about this exact topic, and it said something I haven't been able to stop thinking about. I'm happier in my imaginary life than I am in real life. That hit differently, because it's not just sad, it's honest, and it tells us something really important. For a lot of people, these imaginary worlds aren't escapism, they're survival. They're the mind's way of building a soft place to land when the real world feels too unpredictable, too painful, or too far out of control. Your brain is not tormenting you when it replays the past. It is trying, in the only way it knows how, to make you feel okay again. Your brain doesn't replay the past to punish you. It replays it to protect you. But here's where it gets a little more complicated. Because this same mechanism, the one that prepares you, protects you, and helps you survive, can quietly become something else entirely. It can become a place you never leave. Chapter 2, When the Inner World Becomes a Hiding Place. Picture someone who has a whole life inside their head. A life where they say the right things, where they're confident, respected, truly understood, where the relationships they've always wanted actually exist, and the version of themselves they've always wished they could be finally is. Now picture that same person finding it harder and harder to care about the life that's actually happening around them. That's not a character in a film. For a lot of people, that's just Tuesday. Here's the part most people have never heard about, and honestly, it's my favorite. Psychologists have a concept called identity rehearsal. When you imagine yourself giving that presentation perfectly, standing up for yourself in that difficult conversation, living the life you actually want, not the one you settled into, you are not wasting time. You are building a self. Here is why that matters. Research in cognitive neuroscience has found something quietly extraordinary. The brain does not always draw a clean line between something you vividly imagine and something you actually experience. The neural pathways that fire during vivid mental simulation are remarkably similar to the ones that fire during a real lived experience, which means that when you imagine yourself walking into that room with confidence, saying the thing, becoming that person, your brain is running a low-level rehearsal for that identity. You are not just daydreaming, you are practicing who you are becoming. Elite athletes have understood this for decades. Visualization is a standard tool in high-performance sport, not because coaches believe that wishing makes things real, but because the brain responds to vivid, repeated mental rehearsal almost as though it actually happened. The mind you build in your imagination becomes the foundation that your real self walks on. But now, and this is the part that calls for a little honesty, we need to talk about the line, because everything I've described so far is healthy. It's normal. It's actually quite powerful. There is a point, though, where it tips. Researchers use the term maladaptive daydreaming to describe what happens when the imaginary world stops being a tool and starts being a replacement. Not a flight simulator you step into, practice in, and then leave. A place you move into permanently. Some people describe crying real tears during imaginary scenarios, feeling genuine grief over relationships that never actually existed, losing hours, sometimes entire days, so deeply inside their own minds that the real world begins to feel thin, distant, less real than the one they built themselves. And here's what makes it so difficult to recognize from the inside. It doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like relief. It feels like the only place where things make sense. But if your inner world is consistently more compelling than your outer one, that's not your imagination being too strong. That's a signal. Something in your real life is quietly asking to be looked at. So how do you actually tell the difference? Here's the clearest way I know to think about it. Healthy. You imagine a hard conversation before it happens, and then you actually go and have it. Unhealthy. You imagine it so many times that having it in real life starts to feel unnecessary or terrifying. Healthy. You replay a painful memory, feel some release, and notice a small shift inside yourself. Unhealthy. You replay it hundreds of times, and it's still just as raw every single time, because it was never actually processed. It was just re-experienced over and over. The purpose of mental simulation is to prepare you for reality, not to quietly, comfortably replace it. So if you start to notice your inner world becoming a hiding place from your outer one, meet that with curiosity, not judgment. Ask yourself gently, what am I rehearsing? And am I actually going to do it? So here is what we know. Your brain creates fake scenarios because it is trying to protect you, to prepare you, to help you heal, and to grow you into a version of yourself you haven't fully stepped into yet. The same mechanism that makes you lie awake, replaying an old argument, is the exact same one that elite surgeons use to mentally rehearse complex procedures. The same pull into your own head is what Olympians rely on before they ever step onto the field. Your brain does not separate real from imagined as cleanly as we tend to think, which means every single time you picture the best version of yourself, you are already, in some small but very real way, becoming them. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. What kind of scenarios does your brain replay the most? Arguments you never finished? Conversations you're afraid to start? Or maybe a version of your life that hasn't happened yet, but one that you keep coming back to? I genuinely read every single comment, and your answer might just become the next video on this channel. If this felt like something you needed to hear today, subscribe, because this is exactly what we do here. We decode the human mind, one behavior at a time. I'll see you in the next one.